About Endlessness is an oddly compelling film featuring short vignettes about the human condition, all shot in one static take and mostly self-contained. It's plotless and very deliberately paced, so it feels like something that could have come off as insufferably arty under a lesser filmmaker, but Roy Andersson totally pulls it off. The cinematography, though mostly grey and colorless, is quite entrancing, which helps. Each shot feels meticulously composed, so the movie is always appealing just on a visual level. The film also frequently shifts tones, which helps it to not feel one note. Some of the segments are darkly comic, some are oddly moving, some are just banal, and the whole thing is fairly depressing, but in an uplifting way somehow. It's hard to put your finger on why this works as well as it does, but I could have easily watched another hour of these entrancing shorts. Quentin Tarantino has talked a lot about how he only wants to make 10 movies because directors tend to get worse as they age and he wants to go out on a high note. And generally speaking, he's probably right, but there are exceptions to every rule, and here's Paul Schrader as a very big exception to that rule. Even excluding films that he wrote and didn't direct, classics like Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, the man is 75 years old and 23 movies into his filmography and is still at the absolute top of his game. Yes, he's had some duds, but considering that his last two films were this and the equally excellent First Reformed, clearly not every director gets worse as they age. Featuring very confident direction from Schrader and great performances from Oscar Isaac, Ty Sheridan, and Tiffany Haddish, the card counter is always abundantly compelling. I thought the original Wrong Turn was not great, so I went into this with very low expectations. It's an improvement over the original in every regard. The film does a great job of starting out in a way that seems very familiar, only to take a hard left turn and go places you wouldn't expect. And it keeps doing that on a regular basis. Director Mike P. Nelson brings the film a decent sense of style and does a great job of ramping up the tension when he needs to. I might be overrating this movie a little bit, but you know what? I don't care. It goes way above and beyond what you'd expect from a horror remake, putting its own stamp on things and just generally being so much more interesting and skillfully made than it needs to be. Small Engine Repair was written by, directed, and stars John Polano, who obviously made this as a showcase for his own talents, and yeah, it worked. The man is clearly very talented. He does a great job of balancing the film's initial low-key character drama with its more eventful second half. The plot doesn't actually kick in until like halfway through the movie, but the characters and performances are all so strong that this never feels like an issue. The film stars John Bernthal, Shea Wiggum, and Polano himself, and the three men have a very endearing, lived-in chemistry that ensures that things stay compelling throughout. It also has a slow burn sense of tension in the second half that's really well done. Featuring a fun, pitch-black sense of humor, an inventive Rashomon-esque narrative in which the story is told from each character's point of view, and a whole bunch of great performances, The Last Duel isn't Ridley Scott at his best, but it's a solid B+. The film makes the interesting choice of making all of its male characters, and its biggest stars, unlikable to varying degrees, from Matt Damon's hot-headed doofus to Adam Driver's charming sociopath to Ben Affleck's douchebag aristocrat. This, along with the film's frequent dark comedy, makes it feel delightfully unique from other similar period epics, with none of the good-hearted nobles you'd expect, just a whole bunch of jerks being jerks. Ridley Scott is certainly treading familiar ground with a movie like this, but there's enough interesting stuff going on here that it never feels like a rehash. Bonus, there isn't a whole lot of action here, but the film's titular duel is thoroughly intense and easily one of the best action scenes of the year. Sweat features great direction from Magnus von Horn, who infuses the film with a low-key style and does a great job with the film's pacing, which is deliberate but never feels slow. He also very skillfully balances the film's mundane day-to-day stuff with a handful of surprisingly riveting sequences. But really, most of the credit for the film's success needs to go to Magdalena Kolsnick in the main role, whose performance is understated but thoroughly compelling. The film easily could have felt like any number of plotless European character studies, but the skillful direction and mesmerizing central performance ensure that this is never the case. The Killing of Two Lovers is one of those movies that makes you immediately want to see what else the director has done, because it is very much the work of someone who absolutely knows their craft, featuring very confident, unflashy direction from Robert Machowen that emphasizes long takes that suits the material perfectly. The style here is actually quite distinctive, with some very striking boxy cinematography from Oscar Ignacio Jimenez, and an ultra distinctive score from Peter Albrechtsen that does a pretty amazing job of bringing the viewer into the main character's head. The film is very much a slow burn, but the pacing always feels just right, with great performances from Clayne Crawford and Sepideh Moafi, and a simmering sense of tension that comes to a head in a downright electrifying finale. Featuring a great sense of low-key style from director Fernanda Valadez and stunning cinematography from Claudia Becerril Bulos, Identifying Features is always compelling just on a visual level. It's also surprisingly gripping despite its deliberate pacing. The film is absolutely, positively not in a hurry, but it's always compelling and even kind of riveting in spots, thanks to Valdez's skillful direction and thanks to the powerhouse lead performance from Mercedes Hernandez. The film often rests on an unbroken close-up of Hernandez's face as she talks to various people during her journey, and her soulful performance is a big part of why the film works as well as it does. I love Jason Statham, but sometimes it can be a bummer to be a fan because as great as he is, most of his movies are just okay. So it brings me no shortage of joy to say that Wrath of Man is legitimately great. This is a burly, immensely satisfying thriller with Jason Statham at his best as a terse badass who is thoroughly unflappable in his quest for vengeance. It's written and directed by Guy Ritchie, who tones down his usual flashiness, bringing the film a great understated sense of style, simmering tension, and a satisfying combo of slow burn character moments and legitimately exciting action. Ritchie's knack for dialogue remains as strong as ever, with snappy, hard-boiled dialogue that's perfectly delivered by people like Statham, Holt McCallany, and Jeffrey Donovan. Featuring Wes Anderson's usual combination of ultra-composed visuals and memorable characters, The French Dispatch is an absolute joy from start to finish. Anderson's style seems to be getting more and more distilled as his career goes on. It's kind of like a sauce that's been simmering on the stove for hours. The more it boils down, the more delicious it gets. Wes Anderson is very much a love him or hate him type of filmmaker. It seems like either you connect with his incredibly distinctive style and his deadpan sense of humor, or you find it insufferable, and I very much fall into the former camp. Of course, the film is predictably dazzling to look at with its distinctive production design and Anderson's amazing command of framing and camera movement, but the film is so much more than just a pretty face. There's so much joy and life here, with every character, even ones who only appear for a single scene, being so distinctive and crammed with personality. And now, without comment, here's my bottom 10 set to It's Hard to Be a Baby by Jordy.
C'est dur être bébé.